Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another special edition of the Major League Rugby update on the Bonus Point Rugby podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Tj Olsen. And just before we jump into the pod, I just want to start off by thanking our amazing sponsors. First off, Whalebird Kombucha. If you're looking for a great tasting beverage that is actually good for you, go try them out at your local Whole Foods, Air One, or other health food stores. Secondly, F45 Culver City. So F45 isn't just a gym, it's a real community, and the team are all there to help you achieve your fitness goals with sessions in just 45 minutes. They're currently doing outdoor workouts to work around the COVID-19 restrictions, so be sure to reach out to them to get a great workout during these trying times. So, like I said, it's a very special episode because we have many amazing guests on the show today. As you can see, in any project I'm usually involved in, I always like to collaborate with others just because not only are you able to learn from great people and get unique perspectives, but you also collectively help each other grow and get the ability to share your passions to different groups and different demographics. So on today's show, we have four amazing guests. Please welcome our usual guest analysts from the Rugby Index, Cam and Walker Tice. And from the Rugby Rant Podcast, we've got Ty Braga and Rob Hammerschmidt. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us
on the show.
Thanks. I'm flabbergasted that I'm both amazing and great, but I really appreciate it.
Hey, I throw in as many adjectives and compliments.
Yeah, flattery will get you everywhere with us, TJ.
Of course, mate. It's with flattery and I think beers. It's always the best way to go with rugby people. Is you just hit those two and you're good.
Hey, mate, you're not South African, so you're not working the official, are you? Because that's what I hear they do.
New Zealand born, US born, New Zealand grown, and then lived in Australia for a bit. So yeah, I've got a bit of a mix. But gentlemen, thank you all for being on the podcast today. Before we get started, I just want to wish Cam and Walker a happy belated birthday. Hope you guys had an awesome day yesterday, and also
thank you.
Shout out to you guys for also blowing up my Twitter feed as usual for all the breaking MLR news. If you guys haven't heard, whoever's listening, heard about the Rugby Index, check them out on Twitter and Instagram as they're the leading digital platform for MLR player tracking, market values, and team rosters, things like that. So be on the lookout. But yeah, happy birthday, fellas. I hope you guys had an awesome day. But we have two new guests today. And obviously, just before we jump into our first segment, I want to talk briefly about you guys and your podcast. So the show was previously known as the MLR Rant, or now known as the Rugby Rant. Ty, I'll give you the floor. Can you tell our listeners who may not know about your podcast and why the name change?
Well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity to talk about it, TJ. Yeah, I mean, like most people, we just started out as a passion, driven, by the hobby, and we had started focusing on MLR. Quickly grew in the rugby-starved nation that the US is right now. It grew to popularity quite fast. People are still thirsty for rugby content. Myself, I actually run the MLR fan zone as well as the Facebook group. So that kind of become a hub of activity and conversation. And through that, I actually noticed two of my co-hosts arguing about rugby. Imagine that, right?
Yeah.
Both on opposing sides. The conversation was fierce and back and forth constantly. And I think the comment was from myself was, well, guys, we should probably put this on TV. People might like to watch it. And so as we fast forward, not only were we successful under the title of the MLR Rant, we've now decided to be able to expand the conversation and open it up to the Rugby Rant. So now we can explore conversations in regards to the women's game, men's game of USA Eagles, Canadian rugby, and everything in between. So, our focus is to grow rugby one fan at a time. And I'm sure that Rob would echo those very same sentiments.
Yeah, Rob, sure. Do you want to cover that as well? Just your point of view on the podcast and what you guys wanting to achieve with it?
Well, I think for us, like Ty said, we started off as just a hobby. Perhaps it was a diversion from COVID a little bit for all of us. And then as things started to snowball and grow, we really kind of caught the tiger by the tail, so to speak, and figured that we were onto something. We had enough fans that were chiming in and commenting on the MLR fan zone, letting us know that they liked what we had to say, and they found our platform interesting. So we decided to take it up a notch for this fall, and we hope that our fans will follow along and enjoy what we have to offer.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely get some information from you guys at the end of the episode, just in regards to when your next episode's coming out. Because me as a fan, I'm personally super excited to see that episode. I love the MLR Rant, and I love that whole podcast.
Well, just to give you an insight and a bit of a teaser for anybody that's listening, 2nd of September will be, so depending on when this airs, it might already have happened, right? But we're fortunate enough that Rob worked quite hard, and we have an interview lined up with Stephen Hoyles, the assistant coach for LA Giltini.
Nice.
Now, naturally, not many people have heard anything from the Giltini, so it's an exciting one.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, I know Hoyles there pretty well. He knows a lot of my friends, obviously, from Australia, and he's coached the Aussie Sevens, so I know he's dealt with a lot of different people in that regard. Right. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. I know he's a great coach and he's a great guy, so super looking forward to that one. But without further ado, let's get stuck into the first segment, and our first segment is usually our rapid recap. So where we go is usually give a quick recap of all the new signings, re-signings into MLR. So Walker, do you want to jump into that one?
Yeah, it's par for the course. It's been a busy couple of weeks for MLR. This is essentially the restricted free agent time and should be wrapping up. So while this has been a pretty active couple of weeks, I imagine the next couple of weeks are going to be equal, if not just as active. Atlanta kind of kicks it off with Jonas Petra Kopolopoulos.
That's a last name, yeah.
Martini Kalapousi. Pele Kali at Austin, Samoan-born scrum half. You've got Martello Torabella. You've got Frank Hala, which I'm really excited about, a New Zealand capped 7s and 15s player, a great winger for them. Wasn't sure if he was going to be returning. Obviously excited that he is. Dallas continues to stay young, which I'm really excited to see. I think it's the first team that really hasn't made a splash with big names to start. It's all been very youth oriented, and I'm really excited to see that it creates a great foundation. But James Malcolm, a U20 Scottish front rower, Conrado Rora out of Argentina, 7s player and U20 15s player. DC re-signed the Canadian legend at this rate, Kieran Hearn, the Houston Sabercats, let's see here. I'm not going to be able to pronounce. They signed a Georgian prop. These are some brutal names. A Romanian center and then a Fijian lock. Check out our page because I'm not going to be able to pronounce any of those names. New England signed.
If only it were that easy, if you were the commentator, you'd just be like, the Fijian has the ball. He passed it to the Aussie.
That would be, yeah. So they're going to have to do better than I am, obviously.
Don't worry. I see on Super Rugby all the time, all the I would say Anglo-Saxon commentators, they would try and pronounce the biggest island name I've ever seen in my life, and I would sit there and go, you did a good job, mate. No, that was good. I'll give
it was worth a try.
Sometimes you take the L and don't butcher it, and you just take the highlights that you can, I suppose. New England with Jack Ram and arguably the best loose forward name of all time. Tongan 15s and 7s player. John Pullen, the scrum half, has been signed. Eric de Jager, the prop coming in from Cheetahs, a Pro 14. Jackson Thebes is back. He's a football convert, so excited to see how he continues to progress. I think he was playing a lot of club rugby to continue to develop his skills, so hopefully he continues to make an impact for the Free Jacks. Stephen Henshaw, Mitch Wilson was a new one, high school and collegiate All-American. San Diego, they've been relatively quiet, but starting to make a little bit more noise. CeCe Mahoney, who got an opportunity early as a young Tongan lock with the U.S. national team, Tongan descent, I should say. Only 23 years old, has a couple of caps, and really, if he can keep his fitness up, I think he's somebody that can make a peek back into the national team. Obviously, still very young. Aaron Mitchell, prop, Jason Teal, center, Ben Mitchell, and Save Totovasua. Toronto kind of wraps it up with Mike Shepard, Johnny Sheardon, and then Jason Higgins, scrum half. Was with Rooney a couple of years ago, took an absence out of MLR, and now is back.
Okay, yeah, I think obviously like last episode, we've got a lot to cover, a lot of new signings, but and obviously Jack Ram is a guy that I'm super excited to see, but I'm personally excited for Jackson Thebes for New England. Although he's played both rugby and football, he played predominantly a lot of football in his college career, and I'm looking forward to seeing how impactful a lot of these so-called football converts can be in this league. Rob, is there anyone particular on the list that you're excited to see?
Yeah, I'm a NOLA guy, so of course I'm excited to see that NOLA's been extremely active throughout the course of the whole summer. I think they've been pretty consistent in their activity, particularly right around the draft. Not only that I think they got after it in the draft, but that they also signed some young free agents, as well, that didn't get drafted, or guys that couldn't enter the draft. And Sam Barry is one of them. Real young kid, played in Europe a little bit in between playing at UCLA and his stint with the USA Sevens All-Americans. Brian Nolt, of course, was drafted, carries a nice size, and I think that's going to be a nice player to develop in their system. But I think those guys are kind of going to develop over time. It's going to take a year or two before they really become a full-time starter, but we've seen that NOLA is really good at developing their players out of college. I can't help but to mention that they've lost Con Foley and Scott Gale, and so it'll be interesting to see who they find in that midfield to really not only find the gaps, but also take down a couple of defenders with them. And of course, Carl Meyer is going to be one of those individuals. But key additions: Damian Stevens. They needed a scrum half because Scotty Gale had to step in the absence of Holden Youngert last year, and I think that really hurt them because they were used to seeing Scotty Gale play at 10 rather than 9. So it's important that they have a good backup and they have a good mix at halfback. Of course, Juan Capiello from Argentina 15s and the Puma 7s. I'm interested in him. And of course, Devon Short, right? The big trade. They really have I think, to me, and I'm biased, I'll admit it, their back row has to be one of the best back rows in the MLR. You have a USA stalwart in Cam Dolan. You've added Devon Short. You have a guy like Malcolm May, who's just a physical presence on the field. You have Nikolai Bursic, who's very versatile, can play in the second row, can play in the back row. So I'm really excited to see what these new players that bring in, not only their young guys, but these new signings bring to the mix and add to what I believe to be a very consistent roster.
Yeah, definitely. Ty, do you have anything to add to that?
Obviously, Rob is heavily weighted in his opinion with NOLA, but I truly do think they have got a good side. And you mentioned something about investing in youthful players. That's important to note that NOLA has that strategy all the way through. They're continuing to be able to build. So when they sign a player, they're not thinking next season, they're thinking 3 seasons ahead.
Yeah.
They're willing to invest in those players. You spoke about Dallas doing the same thing. I think that's notable as well. So, they got the draftees, they got the team, but the ones that I've been tracking have been where the Raptors have found their new hub. So it's great to be able to see with Dallas, you got names like Chad Gock, Carla Denison, a great scrum half. Between him and Nick Boyer that were trading spots this season for Colorado. And it remains yet to be seen what else will be coming and where the rest of them will find their home. But it's pretty exciting to be able to see that. I would say easily 50% of that squad has already found their home.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that will wrap it up for our rapid recap. And Cam, don't worry, I didn't forget about you because I'm going to get you the first opportunity to talk about our next first topic. And it's a big one. It's about DTH Van der Meer. I never know how to pronounce his name properly. I always butcher it. So Walker, you're not the only one that does it. And DTH has played in 3 World Cups for Canada. He played for the Saracens. He played for the Scarlets. And now he's been with Glasgow for a while. And he's supposedly in talks with multiple MLR teams. So obviously, I know you guys have multiple reports. Ty, you'll probably have something. Rugby Index and Rob, you guys will have something. But instead of me getting the reports, I want to ask you guys today, who you guys think this amazing veteran player would fit well and in which team? So, Cam, I'll go to you first. Where do you think he will be a good fit?
This might be a newer club or name that's thrown around. But I see a franchise like San Diego being maybe not a fit, but his top choice for him. A lot of people threw around like LA or Seattle just because West Coast, and LA, he kind of is one of those blockbuster players you think LA would try and go after. But I think from his perspective, he's used to a pretty high level competition and standard from playing overseas. And I mean, San Diego set the precedent that they're going to be a staple at the top of the table in the MLR. So I think going to a club where it's nothing but consistency and winning, he's not going to go to a club where it's going to be a project or a work in progress. It's going to be something where it's win now. We're competing for championships.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's the battle of the brothers now because I'm putting you on the spot. Walker, who you got for this one?
I'll answer this in two parts. I would love to see him go to LA. Big name, big city. Let's turn on the lights and have a show. I personally think, having spent a lot of time throughout his life in British Columbia, Seattle is where he's going to end up. They obviously didn't have the abbreviated 2020 season that they probably had hoped, being two-time defending champs. So, but to Cam's point, he goes to a club that, while 2020 was maybe a little bit rocky, you talk about history, and they've got 2 championships out of 2. So being close to a home and going to a winning program doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah. Okay. Ty, you're next, and I'll round it off with Rob.
I kind of echo the same thoughts as Walker there. I think that Seattle could very well be a logical home for him. I think the side of play, proximity to home base for him is good. I also like what Cam had said about San Diego. So there's merits in both those conversations. And then with LA, you have to think that they are working hard to be able to target a high-profile player, and he would fit that bill. But then that being said, playing at the high level, at the highest level possible, I think it would probably be between Seattle and San Diego, given their history of success and given the consistency that they have in what they do, and the players that he has the ability to be alongside, with Chris Robshaw being the addition to the team in San Diego. What a phenomenal platform to be able to build and move even further forward in your own career as a player, to be alongside some of the best that have ever seen the game.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Rob, you got the final word. Who you got?
Oh, I'm under the gun here. So I like San Diego. I think it's a nice choice, of course, with the loss of Ma'anonu going back to New Zealand, and they have a need for some depth at center, but they were extremely deep to begin with. So that's a possibility. I like Seattle too. They have a couple of young centers that Seattle drafted, and what Nick Taylor, and I think the other young man is Stevens. I can't quite remember, but it'd be nice to have at 34 years old, here's a guy who could provide a lot of guidance for a couple of young centers that have some promise moving forward in the future. So certainly it would shore up an issue, this year, possibly next year. But then you start to turn over the reins a little bit to some young guys. But I'm not going to overthink this. I'm saying Toronto.
All right. Okay.
I'm saying Toronto. All right. We spoke with Bill Webb a couple weeks ago, Ty, right? And,
right.
I got the sense from talking to him that they weren't done, that they had a couple of aces in their back pocket. And I think this is one. I mean, of course, he plays for Canada. And don't forget, they lost Dan Moore, right, at the wing. And he can go at the wing too. So I have a sense that they'll really get a lot from his leadership if he goes there. He's a known commodity with Toronto. He's a known commodity with the boys that play with the Canadian setup. And I think it would make sense and solidify that roster and settle them down and prepare them to pick up where they left off last year.
All right. So quickly, with raise of hands, how many people think that he's going to make a 4th World Cup in the squad for Canada? I think that it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
In the world of possibilities.
Yeah. I mean, you guys see how much practice and tank.
Look, when you're talking about second tier nations, we just don't have a lot of options that is required when you go into World Cup. So I think, you notice there are a lot of guys in the USA setup and Canadian setup that have been to 2 and 3 World Cups because they want the experience. They want somebody steady. They want to know commodity. They want a guy who's been in that before that can lead some of those younger guys into the process.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing to consider, though, is playing at home in North America, so to speak, there's far less games in a season for them. If you're in the European League, so the physicality on your body tends to be less from what a lot of players have said. So it could have the ability to mean that you play your rugby a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm definitely going to be biased here living in LA, and I hope that he does come to LA, and I hope that that could be one of the big splashes that my anonymous source told me. So that would be something that would be amazing. But to be honest, if we're being realistic, it's most likely going to be heavily Australian, or most of their international players are going to come over from Australia because of that connection. Right. But we'll see. I would love to see him in any of these teams because he's a phenomenal player. But let's move on to our second topic for the episode, and it's going to be regarding the Alex Maggleby's interview with George Kilbrew. So specifically, I want to split our conversation into two key areas. So obviously, we've got the financial growth of the league, and we've got the MLR's marketing strategy. So firstly, let's chat about the financial growth. And one of the financial focuses for growth is the implementation of the expansion fees. So if you're listening to this, please don't fall asleep. We're going to give you an explanation, and we're going to go through all this. But for Walker, for our listeners who don't know about these or don't have an in-depth understanding about these, can you walk us through what these are in place for and how they support the league?
Yeah, they're very prevalent in really any single entity model. It's a license to have a franchise is the easiest way to boil it down. So as the league continues to grow, as the value of a team continues to increase, a new club coming in with the pursuit of joining MLR will have to pay a franchise fee to join the league. That value is accumulated in a number of different ways between number of teams and perceived value or valuations of other clubs, but the league as a whole as well. And then that money is very vital for stability throughout the league. A lot of it goes to the league office, but it's also distributed throughout the other clubs. So, you bring in, and it's rumored to be about $10 million nowadays, where you interject $10 million, and let's be honest, it's pretty vital for a lot of clubs right now. Even if the league office takes maybe $1 million of that, you distribute another 9 between 13 active clubs, maybe 14. Obviously, Kanaloa potentially joining. That's that $9 million over 13 teams. That's close to $800,000. That's significant dollars that can really keep clubs afloat and keep some of these fringe clubs financially stable right now. And that's why I think there's been a lot of talk back and forth of fans, especially. Is the league growing too fast? Is there not enough player depth and so on? And that's a totally separate conversation. But and from my experience working in professional sports and in specifically Major League Soccer, expansion always brings stability, whether it's, and we talk about this concept of diversification of revenue streams. Well, expansion fees are a revenue stream. And while they're sometimes inconsistent, depending on how rapidly or not you're expanding, anytime you can bring those dollars in, and especially right now, given the limitations of 2020, it's pretty vital dollars.
Mm-hmm. Rob and Ty, do you guys have anything to add to that in regards to the expansion fees, or do you think that it's pretty well covered with Walker?
No, I think he did a great job of covering it. One thing that's important to note is that year after year, it steadily has increased. And while it's definitely recognized, or say the consensus is that it's about 10 million or so at the moment, where will it be by 2022, 2023, if it's trending upward like that? So yeah, it definitely stands as their biggest cash injection into it. So it is heavily weighted as great importance. Yeah.
Rob and Cam, do you guys have anything to add?
The only thing I was going to say is, obviously in these difficult times, butts and seats makes a difference for revenue streams, and with COVID, it's going to be a tough road to hoe there. And without a TV production rights, without a TV broadcast contract, it's going to be really important that at least the addition of these teams, and we're seeing some teams coming this year, especially with Kanaloa, LA, Dallas, and there's talk of Florida, Miami franchise. So this might help sustain the league through these kind of lean times and through the difficulty of maybe having no butts in the seats, and get them over the hump and still kind of create that the excitement that's been generated over the past two and a half seasons.
Okay. Cam, anything to add just to round it off?
Rob touched on it a little bit. I think there is a bit of a misconception. And Walker said that his point is dead on, that these expansion fees are just incredibly vital at this time in the league's existence. But I think there's a misconception that, well, we have TV deals and then the rugby's had TV, but that's really not a revenue stream at the time for the league, simply because it's more of a service to the fans. And they're honestly, if anything, they're probably losing some dollars on providing it to the fans and just trying to get it out there for viewership, rather than actually bringing in or having a broadcasting network that will actually pay for it at this point.
And to that point, if I can just build upon what Cam was saying there, in regards to the broadcast, it is a liability. Rob had actually mentioned this in one of our previous episodes, but we recently had the opportunity to talk with Scott Green, who officiated the last two championship finals. So TMO is always a topic of discussion. Why don't we have it in the MLR? Well, it comes down to production, right? We don't have the ability, or at least every stadium doesn't have the ability to reach that standard because of the cost that is burdened through broadcasting. You have to have more teams. You have to have more camera angles. You need more cameras. So yeah, at this time, it is more of an expense than anything else. To that point though, it is increasing and the viewership is building. What I enjoyed hearing from Killebrew in that interview is that he had said that one of the games this season, which was the Free Jacks and let me see, I had my notes here. Free Jacks, San Diego. Now, obviously, San Diego has really great, phenomenal sport in stadium. It looks good on camera. The optics look fantastic. It's a good field. Doesn't have the cross-hatching of all the football marking. So it looks good, right? It's a great product. So that ended up having a television rating of 0.88. To put that in context, it is the highest rating that they have ever received on Fox Sports 2 for a regular season game thus far.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So incredible to be able to see that. Sadly, it was cut short, but the momentum was definitely trending upwards.
Yeah. I'll just, again, compound on what Ty said and echo what Cam said. And he's exactly right in that a lot of times this broadcast, it can be very close to either making money or, not making money, let alone breaking even. The caveat to that is that while the league is trying to develop more paid sponsorships, with all that viewership, it's just higher leverage to then go to these sponsors and say, not only are our eyeballs in the stadium, but you've got eyeballs across the country. These are our biggest markets and so on. And so you can continue to leverage that not only to get paid sponsorships, but eventually even larger sponsorships. So kind of a double-edged sword there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, Rob, you touched on it a little bit. It's another part of the financial growth is going to be contingent on ticket sales and game day revenue. You said butts and seats, but with COVID-19 still very present in the US, who knows if we're going to see fans attend games due to safety concerns, whether that's during half the season or even potentially, we don't even know what's going to happen in the future. So, Ty, I'll go to you first. Obviously, if this does happen, this will impact the league, but how severely? So do you think that things like the expansion fees and things like that, they will cover our ass, excuse my French, or will it be something that
your French is perfect, I understand.
Yeah, not having those butts and seats will be impacting it so severely?
I mean, you got to think worst case scenario is what you're addressing. Okay, if we have no games, I mean, I feel bad already because think about it. This is actually, if that comes to be true, that there's not going to be, or there's going to be a delayed start to the season, it's going to impact all the teams, but it's going to impact some more than others. If you look at somebody like Toronto or Rooney, who didn't even have a home game this season, they didn't have a single ticket sold that somebody could actually use. So refunds, some were carried over. So yeah, it's an incredible burden. If that does happen, that we have to push back the date of the start. Now, there are some rumors, all rumors, of course, but there has been rumors that it might be an April start. So why would you want to be able to choose this? Well, I would have to imagine that if I was trying to think about the strategy, and obviously everybody's pulling their hair out trying to be able to figure out a plan A to Z, right? But it's almost worse to be able to be starting the league and have to be able to stop it 2 weeks later. So as much as I hate to be able to admit it, it might be a smart thing to be able to push it back to, say, an April start, something that is still feasible within your model. And
well, that's what a lot of people were pushing for the NFL, because so many people are saying, don't start the NFL now, push it further a couple of months, because like you said, or the MLB, for instance, a lot of people are saying, don't start 2 weeks in and then cancel the whole season after that. So,
and I just like to add, I think it would actually do some teams favors. Think about teams like New England. Think about teams like Toronto. You know, they're not exactly in great climates in February and March.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I live in Chicago, and it is not fun to play rugby anytime in February, and March is just wet, right? And it's no fun, cold and wet, and it's no fun. So you're doing them favors by pushing off, because, you know, we had Doug Wilkie from Arrows Up, and he talked a lot about the fact that, you know, it's a lot of pressure to have Toronto fans show up to the turnstiles 8 weeks in a row without a break, right? Whereas other teams like NOLA or Atlanta or Austin and et cetera, they can have a couple weeks on early on, then they have a week or two off, and then they can bring fans back. They can have their watch parties for away games. It's a lot easier on the fans' pocketbook and time. So by doing, you know, a delayed start till April, I think you're going to actually do a lot of favors to generate a lot of momentum and energy in those northern teams.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Does anybody have anything else they want to add to that just before I move on to the marketing?
Well, the one thing I would add to that is that's actually something that came out of the interview with Killebrew, is that he said that they're actually looking at the MLB, NCAA, these organizations, and they're trying to study what they're doing, analyze it, and see what they can learn from it. So while we have this no play condition, we've got a lot of time to be able to figure out what next season's going to look like. And I think that's what they're looking at, the positive in all of this.
Yeah, definitely. All right, cool. So obviously the other facet is we're going to speak about the marketing strategy of the league. So obviously something the league is trying to do is grow player recognition. And that's something that is very important, especially with people getting to know the sport, is getting to know the big players. So something that's getting thrown around a lot is the idea of names on back of the jerseys. And I'll just give my personal take on it. I understand why the MLR could look at doing this. And I know a lot of fans would want to buy a jersey with their favorite player's name on it. But to be honest, I've personally liked the idea of being unique and being the rugby jersey is just a rugby jersey. So it's something where I know some competitions have done it, whether it's overseas from here or UK or Japan, things like that. But and you picture certain players, like you picture Dan Carter in the 10 jersey for the Crusaders, or you picture Todd Clever in your US jersey. But a rugby jersey's always has that aura to it, where it's that next guy could step up and they could, at any given moment the following week, they could do that jersey proud. So just like the DTH topic, I'll go around and I'll see what you guys think about that opinion. Cam, we'll go to you first. What do you think?
I think it could honestly, this kind of touches back to our previous topic. I think it could be a very interesting revenue stream. I know jersey sales aren't what makes or breaks a league, but at this point, revenue, one of the biggest points, regardless of the topic, Killebrew made was diversifying revenue streams. And if, the clubs and league itself gets a cut of that revenue stream, dollars in the pocket are crucial at this point. And if that means someone's going to buy a jersey of their, honestly, if you're a collector, imagine what a Chris Robshaw San Diego jersey with Robshaw on the back of it would go for. Like,
yeah,
that's the baseball card mentality, but it's something different they could definitely look into. But the other question is, I've seen I was actually watching some Pro 14 earlier, and I noticed that in place of where I guess you would put a name on the back of the shoulders, they had all advertising. So what is the difference? Are you going to have a paid sponsor on the back of the jersey across the shoulders that makes you more money, or are you going to have a player's name on the back that, after market research is done, is a stronger revenue stream? We don't know, but it could honestly be a leveraging point for sponsorships. Now that I'm kind of hashing it out loud, you could take it and say, hey, this is what revenue we generated with names on the back of the jerseys. Imagine if that's your logo.
Okay. All right. Rob, your thoughts?
Oh, it's kind of interesting. I don't have a problem with it. I grew up playing American football when I was a youngster, so names on jerseys, I'm all used to it. Here's my concern. Austin, I thought they did it last year for a couple games, right? And
Did
they
they?
even put numbers on the front. I think they did. And what it was, see, because they had to apply it via heat press, they actually peeled off during part of the game. Like numbers were peeling off shirts during part of the game. So to me, it kind of, when that starts to happen, the product visually starts to lose its appeal, particularly on TV. What I thought is interesting from that interview is Alex Magleby talked about putting actually names on the shorts. So a player, if you're 1 through 23, you're not giving your shorts to anybody. You're going to wear your shorts, right? So you put your name on your shorts, right? Which I thought was kind of an interesting approach. Probably a little hard for TV, but an interesting approach. Now here's the thing: Rattle Rugby ATL actually sold jerseys, jersey shirts on their shop at the beginning of this year, and they had like my guy down there, Chance Wegalewski, a prop from the United States. There was a shirt that had his name on it, and I thought it was pretty cool. A T-shirt's more reasonable to buy, and I wish they would have had a season to find out how the sales were gonna, how much revenue they were going to generate off the sales, would have produced from those jerseys.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Walker, next.
Well, and ironically, I just got a glimpse of the game behind Ty there. I think Seattle has a sponsor on the back of their jersey there, if I saw it correctly. So I would love to see the numbers. How much revenue did Austin produce and versus Seattle with a jersey sponsor? Obviously, Austin, with their very quick brand transition, has a very finite window to collect data from and see how much revenue you've actually produced of it. But, in different markets, and you can kind of counterpoint through it all. It's obviously American, I don't want to call it tradition, but style to have your name on the jersey. Rugby being such a global sport, I feel like I want to keep true to that. And while MLR can adopt a lot of American styles, for me, that's one that I like to keep kind of, I'll call it standard and not have a name on it. To the point that you made, TJ, it's nice to know that somebody can step into the 2 jersey week in and week out. Might be a different guy, but they can always represent that. And for me, it's more of a team mentality, and even within that, it's a positional mentality that whoever's wearing that 7 jersey for San Diego, they're just known for always being at every single breakdown and every single tackle. It doesn't matter who replaces it or who's wearing it. Well, it's Solomon Muching or Rob Shaw or Tommy Lau, whoever, and he doesn't play 7 much, but you get my point of whoever's in that back row, you just have a perceived value in that player or that position. So, I think if you can sell the jersey sponsor for that shoulder blade area, sell that and kind of keep standard to the rugby style.
Yeah. All right, Ty, you got last word. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, there's a lot of great points that have been made here, but I guess it comes down to a battle between tradition and innovation. So it depends on where your values as a fan lies. But really, as a business, you would think that you would have to be able to see if the model could work. You'd have to investigate it at the very least. So yeah, looking at an option to be able to move it to there's a lot of real estate on a jersey on the back that could be used, as long as it doesn't deter from the tradition of the number. I guess the key difference is that if we were a football player, you could choose your number and that number can follow you in your career. Rugby, you don't have that. Yes, your number follows you, but that's because I think, Rob, you mentioned is that, you take on the jersey of the player before you. It's almost the passing of the torch to the next generation. And so you stand in that jersey, carrying that forward. So there's a different emphasis, a different loyalty to it. But as far as rugby goes in the US, I think you got to lean into what makes rugby here unique. The sporting culture is so different to the rest of the world. So we're not trying to sell rugby to the rest of the world. We're trying to be able to get people here to adopt it and enjoy it. So do it in the way that they find it familiar. My opinion as a fan is inconsequential. We're going to watch it no matter what. Let's be honest. Right? We're not going to play for 10 minutes, but we're going to still watch it. And that's it, because I might have more traditional views. Who am I to tell somebody else how to enjoy their rugby?
Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's, for my personal opinion, may not be the same as anyone else's, but I think you are incorrect from a business standpoint. You have to at least give it a go and see if it does generate some sort of revenue. And if it does pick up and fans do really like it, then so be it. That's the American way. It's something where you guys create something out of nothing, and then it just turns into this big global piece of awesome. So it's something where if it does happen, it does happen. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But yeah, let's see how it goes. But it's called the bonus point for a reason. Oh, sorry. Did someone want to go? Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, just kind of a final point. In a league that has the Giltinis and the Gilgronis, his name's on the back of the jersey, such a extreme, you know.
Like I said, we complain as fans, but guess what? We're still going to be watching it. And
yeah, you had to throw that in there, didn't you? You had to.
Yeah, I saw it. I took it.
Oh man, yeah, no, that's definitely a great point. All right, well, it's called the bonus point for a reason. On the bonus point segment today, we're going to be talking about an interesting topic that's been also thrown around the MLR a fair bit. So it's common knowledge that we've got a cap on how many international players we can have on one MLR team. And the focus is obviously to develop American players. But the Rugby Index boys and I have had conversations with current MLR players and other guys about why the same rule isn't implemented for coaches. So just before I get everyone's opinions on this, I just want to jump in on this topic because I actually have I have a good, I guess, opinion on this. So although some may disagree with me, I see it this way. The limiting on players is valid because you want to grow the game here. You want to develop the younger talent and you want to grow depth. That's why a lot of rugby nations are so powerful, is because they have so much depth. But me personally, when I think about international coaches coming into the league with such a new league and trying to develop players, I think it's supposed to be the best person for the job. And they provide experience and rugby wisdom that some coaches may not, because rugby isn't a tier 1 sport here in the US. But I'll give you an example, as I do think there are some amazing American coaches who definitely can coach in the professional level. Guys like Kevin Battle, he was a part of the US international program as a manager. He's been the D1A Collegiate Rugby Commissioner. He's created the Santa Barbara Rugby Academy from nothing, and he previously coached the pro rugby team competition for Sacramento. But coaches with that much experience and knowledge or potential who are US born don't grow on trees. So you've got guys like Mike Friday from England turning the US Sevens program into number 2 in the world. Even me, when I think as myself as a coach, I grew up around the sport as a tier 1 sport. I developed around it at a very young age. My family, they either coached professionally or they played professionally. So I was able to experience that. And I feel that knowledge, it gives me a leg up in some of those conversations, but that's not saying that American coaches couldn't get the job done as well. I just feel that the best person for the job has to be there. So if USA Rugby, along with the MLR, continue to focus on developing the coaches in their communities, whether that's providing coaching camps and bringing guest lecturers, giving them opportunities to coach the MLR academies, I definitely believe that it's possible to get some American coaches into the MLR, but I think we need to focus on who's right for the job and not right because they're American. And that's my opinion. So Rob, I want to hear your thoughts first. What do you think about this rule if it was to be introduced? Are you for or against it?
Quite frankly, I'm against it. And it's not that I really have anything against developing American coaches. As a matter of fact, I'm very supportive of it. I've been a youth rugby coach for a number of years while my oldest son was playing. But the reason I'm really against it is because I think it takes away from teams the ability to find coaches that fit their values. And within that, how do you determine who's a foreign coach? And I give a great example that fits this exactly what I'm saying. Nate Osborne, and I know NOLA, so I'm going to speak from that perspective. But
I was waiting for it.
Yeah, but here's the deal. He came out of Minneapolis, came out of Metro, right, the club scene. He worked with USA. He's been in the country. He's married to an American. He's an Aussie. And then he's gone down to NOLA, and he's been their only coach. And he's seen them develop from MLR in their infancy to a top-notch MLR team. And
Right.
oh, by the way, when he's down there, he's also helped coach their club teams to championships as well. So here's a guy whose values fit within NOLA's framework, developing players in the United States, helping develop youth rugby. Okay. And I think that's important. The other thing I'd say is I take a cue from my own experience as a club player in the United States. When I first started playing in the mid 90s, it was basically catch the ball, go forward, go down, set the ball, form a ruck, give it to the forwards, give it to the forwards. Oh, there's space out wide, get it through the backs and get it out to your wing. It was pretty straightforward. We are starting to get breeds of kids who have grown up in rugby all of their life, playing from 4th and 5th grade. Are we where other European countries, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia are at? Not yet. But those kids are getting there with increased skills and understanding of the game. We need to make our strategies, defensive and offensive, more complex. How do you do that? You bring coaches who are used to developing kids and developing players in those systems.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And just some context for anyone who's thinking that I can't judge. I was born here in the US and I just moved back to New Zealand. So I technically am an American coach. So I understand where a lot of people are coming from if they disagree with me. So just throwing that point out there. Cam, you're up next. What do you think about the law?
I think there's a compromise that could be made. I think we talk about I think that at least for Americans, the first one that comes to mind is American football. The NFL has the Rooney Rule, where a coach of minority has to be interviewed for every opening position within the club. Now, I think that rule can be doctored a little bit because we're not necessarily focused on minorities at this point, but more so, can we have some sort of rule instated where we can have at least one American coach interviewed, obligatory interviewed for a position when it opens up, just get him in front there and see, because I think that's part of the hardest part is that American coaches don't necessarily have that pathway or that clout. They might be qualified if you got in there and just listen to them talk rugby, but they don't have that clout or the pathway to get in front of a franchise at this point to prove that. And another point I'd like to make, I was kind of doing some research on this. It kind of got me interested. This isn't a singular problem or event in America. And what I found is at the last World Cup, over half the teams had a head coach that was not native to their country. And that the majority of those coaches were actually New Zealand, South African, and Welsh. And so what we're finding is that pretty much all of our coaches, doesn't matter if it's the World Cup top, all the way down, are coming from a handful of nations.
Yeah. Okay, Walker, you're up next, and I'll get you to round it off.
Yeah, I kind of echo what Cam said, and I totally appreciate Rob's point of that it's the best man for the job. And I think we can all agree that if somebody is head and shoulders above the rest of the competition, whether it's a player on the field or a coach in the press box or on the sideline, you want the best man for the job. But I do like Cam's point of creating an opportunity and a pathway. It doesn't mean by default, if an American applies, they get the job. It means that, if we have a position that opens, we go out, scout, recruit, maybe our top 3 to 4 prospects. And if we have a domestic opportunity, we give them a shot. They come in and they flop, and they're not qualified. But if we at least give the opportunity, somebody might surprise us. And while we're here in Cincinnati, I don't like to use Mike Tomlin as an example with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but when he interviewed for that position, he was, considerably what people thought to be underqualified. Well, you fast forward a few years, and I'd say he's done a pretty darn good job.
He's done a great job, yeah.
And so, I think the Rooney Rule is it's not a mandate, but it's a kind of unspoken rule to a degree. It's an emphasis. It's a a pathway. It's a process that you try to implement. It's not set in stone that every single interview has to include 3 Americans or pick X number of individuals. But to the best of our ability, let's try to create that pathway and continue to promote within. And yes, MLR wants to put the best product on the field, and but ultimately we want to continue to see American rugby grow. And you know, if you want a head coach to come over, coach for a few years and leave, that's fine. I can appreciate that. And yes, Rob, they're gonna, you know, Scott, I think is maybe the caveat to this is he's somebody born overseas, moved over however many years ago, and gosh, he was with Metropolis. It seemed like forever. Here in Cincinnati, we played them pretty frequently in the Premiership, and I'll be honest, they most of the time had the upper hand on us. So he's always, I mean, he creates a quality product and has now done it in Hola. But I want to continue to see the American game grow, and after an American coach has that opportunity, learn from, you know, not only players and other coaches, but then they keep that knowledge here and continue to develop the game here. And so I think there's a point, counterpoint, and balance that you will find within it. But I guess those are my general thoughts.
All right, Ty,
I'm sorry to interject. Yeah. Isn't it this is an answer to the wrong question? Okay.
What's that?
I mean, well, it's an answer to the wrong question. Why don't we have more quality coaches that are qualified? Right? It's because we're not developing coaches well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
actually going to be
so I think
point
you
I
just
wanted
found
to
the
jump
underlying
in.
question.
Well, that's actually something I could cover. Is I went to the most recent coaching development camp here in California, and I walked into the room, and there were, I think, 7 people in the whole room, in the whole Los Angeles County, and people. There was many people traveling because it was on the same weekend as LA Sevens. On the Friday or on the Thursday, you can come down, you can travel, you can do the coaching conference, and on Friday or Saturday, whatever day it started, you can go to LA Sevens. But the amount of people that just weren't interested in learning from the elite coaches that they were offering. And I was looking at some, I can't remember specifically who it was in that meeting, but it was an amazing meeting. I'd learned stuff about 7s, 15s that some of it I'd already known. Some of it changed my whole outlook on coaching. It's something where these platforms and options are out there, but some of the coaches still have to go into it and actually take the bull by the horns and go learn from these people. And then once we get international coaches over there, it's definitely something that people need to take advantage of. So it's kind of a catch-22. We've got the options. There needs to be more of them. And when there are options there, coaches need to take advantage of them. So I totally agree with that, Rob. We need to continue to develop American coaches, and it's definitely the answer to the wrong question. So Ty, I'll leave it for you, and then you can round us off.
Well, obviously you guys have covered a lot of great material. So the benefit of going last is that I get to be able to just build on what you guys have said. So yeah, it's important to be able to develop coaches locally. It's also important to note, as Rob mentioned, that coaches that are perceived as being foreign coaches have an investment in American rugby, and maybe they've been doing it for years. So you can't discount the value that they have. But really what it comes down to me is about rugby IQ. You know, you either know the game at a level that is higher than most around you, and if you can you share that with the people around you? Mm-hmm. So ultimately, if you have those two components there, bring in all the experience you can get, make sure that they share it with those around them. And as you so rightly pointed out, you have to have those coaches step up, take the resources available to them, and then also be given the opportunity. Now, another layer of that to recognize is the community game. So get organized. All the different unions as they are, obviously with USA Rugby in disarray, so to speak, it's a bit disjointed. You know, unions had to pick up the ball and run with it themselves. They've had to organize themselves for how long in the US? Since pretty much the start, right? So until there's a lot more unity there, there's a lot more cohesion, there's a lot more cooperation between them all, these guys won't get the opportunities and the resources they want to be able to explore becoming coaches, to be able to develop as a coach, to be able to then reach the higher levels. So there's a hell of a lot of components to be able to address. But I guess the strategy is you need to be able to work it from the top, and you need to grow it from the bottom, and it will meet in the middle.
Yeah, TJ, and I'm passionate about the coaching issue, which is why I'm interjecting quite a bit. But, you brought up a great point about access to quality, skills lessons or quality clinics or whatever. I got my level 2 from USA, and then I wanted to go to a level 3. I could never find a level 3 clinic that was reasonably distanced for me to travel to, considering, remember, that level 3 clinic required me to stay overnight at least 2 nights. Mm-hmm. And I'm doing it for free. Yeah. Right. It's at a cost to me. So I think there's that piece too. USA Rugby is disjointed now. So does that responsibility fall on the local unions and the local organizations to provide that?
Mm-hmm. I do think that with World Rugby stepping in and assisting USA Rugby, I do think that we hopefully will go in the right direction. And that's the reason I moved over here. Is I came over here because I saw how much potential America has in so many other sports plus rugby. They've come into a sport, they've learned it, and they've developed, and then they become the champions at it. That's what America does, and that's why I'm here, because Americans, they do it the best, and you can't disagree with that. But yeah, at the end of the day, all we want to see is American rugby thrive and grow. So Cam, do you have something else you wanted to add by any chance, or Walker, just before we finish?
No.
For me, I just started to dabble in the coaching. I coached my alma mater, University of Cincinnati, and their D1 AA, and for me, the ascension of the club is probably hit a peak a couple of years ago when they made the semifinals. Unfortunately, lost a brutally close match to Notre Dame College. But through all the years of playing and now a little bit of coaching, I learned more from Joff Moore, brother Brad Moore, who's now coaching New Zealand. He came over and coached the Wolfhounds this past fall, and just having him around for even 3 months, just his style of coaching, his perceptions of coaching, I learned more from that than I did in probably, we'll call it maybe 10 years of being involved in the sport now. So I totally appreciate a quality and very qualified person coming over and interjecting their knowledge. But when we talk about sustainability, and Rob's exactly right, we have to have that pathway and that development here. And it's not very accessible. I'm in the same situation. I've got my level 2 completed. I don't know where I can get my level 3. Right. And so I'm in that same boat. And so it's about accessibility. But it's also learning from quality individuals. So it's a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, guys. Well, that's our MLR update done and dusted. I just want to thank our amazing guests, Cam and Walker from the Rugby Index. Be sure to check them out on Twitter and Instagram for all your MLR updates. Also, big thank you to Ty and Rob. I know you guys aren't regular guests on our show from the Rugby Rant, but joining us on the podcast today really, really gave us a whole new element. I love everything you guys are doing for Major League Rugby, for rugby in America. Really looking forward to everything you guys have got in store. Thank you so much. You said it was September 2nd, guys. We're going to be seeing a new episode, the interview with Hoyles. That's right. And then it will run every week. Wednesday, we'll have a live interview with a rugby insider from, of course, the US and Canada. And in addition to that, we'll do our Rugby Rant episodes, which is a rugby debate show where our guests compete against each other for the title to win nothing. No.
Bragging rights
we got
a little trophy.
Bragging rights.
Little trophy. And I agree with Walker. Bragging rights are always the one that you can sit there and you can hold over anyone's head. So that's a good one. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. Lovely episode, lovely insight to everything. I hope everyone enjoyed. And thank you very much for tuning into the Bonus Point Rugby Podcast.